Hello and welcome. I'm Nick from the Center for Teaching and Learning, and I'll be covering some tips for making video more accessible in your classes. Video content is a fantastic way to deliver learning materials to your students, but the trouble with video is that the viewer must have the ability to see and hear to fully experience it. Making video content accessible doesn't only help those with accessibility issues, though. If your viewer is in a loud space or doesn't have a device with speakers, then they have been deprived of the ability to fully hear your content. If your viewer does not have a fast and stable internet connection, their ability to load video content will also be impaired. So how do we address accessibility concerns for video content? Our two required tips for video are to, number one, talk about the visuals you use, and number two, apply closed captions. So, number one, talk about the visuals you use. If your viewer has a visual impairment and must experience your video through a transcript or by sound alone, then they cannot see the pictures or graphs that you show. If the visual is important to the topic of your video, you must verbally describe it so that someone can understand without needing to see it. Decorative images do not require a description, but you're free to add one. Number two, apply closed captioning. Many video websites today offer the ability to automatically generate closed captions or subtitles. YouTube and Canvas Studio, for example, have great captioning engines, but you have to remember to check the "Put subtitles on this video, please" button before your viewers can see the captions. Closed captioning obviously benefits deaf and hard of hearing people, but it also helps non-native language speakers and students who are not auditory learners. Audio and video content should always contain captioning in order to be ADA compliant. These next tips are our recommendations and include overall best practices when making video content accessible. Number three, record videos in a quiet space. Extraneous noise can clutter up the transcript and make it more difficult to understand the speaker. If you need to record your own video content, please ensure that you do so in a space that is free of excessive background noise, such as crying children, off-screen people speaking, noisy air conditioning, and distracting echoes. These are all things that have personally made it harder for me to watch recorded lectures in the past. Noise reduction software can help with milder background noise, but a quiet environment is the best thing to use. If your office does not provide a quiet environment, Kent Library and the EDvolution Center have sound-dampened rooms available for you to record in. Number four, use high-contrast visuals. Visuals with low contrast are difficult to see even if your viewer does not have visual impairments. Use colors that contrast well with each other. For example, you can use black text on a white background, which is default on most programs. Here, you can see an image that shows off these shades of yellow and blue contrast very well, while the lighter and darker shades of green do not contrast well. High contrast color should be applied to your text, styling choices, images, etc. Number five, use easy-to-read fonts. When designing learning materials, pay attention to the fonts you use. Cleaner, simpler fonts are easy to read, while heavily serifed and bendy fonts may not be as readable to your audience. The first image here is a clean sans serif font, while the second image is a total mess of heavily curved, cursive font. When designing materials that are meant to be read on a computer screen, it is recommended that you use sans serif fonts, and when designing materials for print, you use serif fonts. While clean serif and sans serif fonts are widely used and accessible to most people, there are communities that specifically deal with creating fonts to address issues like dyslexia. Here, you can see some text with the Open Dyslexic typeface. It was created by applying more weight to the bottom of the character to distinguish the shape of each letter, which addresses a common complaint from those with various forms of dyslexia. I will include a link in the description to Open Dyslexic's website that has guides for installing the font pack for programs like Microsoft Word and for installing dyslexic-friendly browser plugins. Number 6. Avoid using quick flashing visuals. Those with photosensitive epilepsy can suffer seizures triggered by quick flashing lights. Plus, they're just generally unpleasant to look at. So avoid including them in your video. If you still intend on using instructional videos that have flashing lights, warn your viewers ahead of time. For instance, I will briefly show a flashing visual, so please skip to this timecode on screen if you would like to avoid it. Okay, sorry, I was lying about there being a flashing visual, but you see how easy and attention-grabbing it was to give a warning? Number 7. Use common video resolutions. I'll try not to get too technical here, but when exporting your video from your editing software, use a common video resolution and aspect ratio. You've probably heard things like 1080p and 16:9 being thrown around when you're looking for a new TV. These are referring to the resolution and aspect ratio, respectively. Exporting video at 1920 by 1080p is highly accessible right now, and 1280 by 720p is fine if you're editing on an older computer. Using common resolutions will ensure visuals are not distorted when presented to the user. Number 8. Use common video formats. There are a lot of video formats out there. Some are proprietary or exclusive to certain media companies, while others can be viewed on pretty much any device. When in doubt, use .mp4 or .mov formats when exporting your video from your editing software. Number 9. Post your videos to sites with accessible video players. Please do not hand out .mp4 video files to your students to download. Most of the top video platforms today have video players with great accessibility options. Uploading your videos to Canvas Studio, YouTube, and Microsoft Stream will get you plenty of built-in accessibility features like subtitling, playback speed adjustment. In addition to these baked-in options, video players also allow viewers to stream the video content without having to download the video first. Viewers can even set the quality of the video slightly lower so that they can stream the video over a poor internet connection. If you have questions about how to set up videos in Canvas Studio, please contact the Center for Teaching and Learning. We will be happy to help you. Number 10. Provide a transcript separately. News websites have been doing this for years. The image here is from USA Today that shows the video transcript just below the video player itself. Instead of watching that long video, viewers may find it more accessible or more enjoyable to simply read the words of the video. After you generate your closed captions, you can download them to a file alongside your video. You can post both onto your Canvas course, you can post the links to both in an announcement, maybe put the transcript into the description of your video, etc. Think about which method would be most useful for your students. Number 11. Post your PowerPoints to your Canvas page. If you make a video talking over a PowerPoint, you should also include that PowerPoint in an easy-to-find location on your Canvas class. A PowerPoint version is much more accessible to students that rely on screen readers. And this wraps up our quick tips on making video more accessible. Make sure you check out the description for that Open Dyslexic font pack. I thought it was really cool. If you would like to know more tips on accessibility, make sure you contact the Office of Accessibility Services here on campus, and check out our other videos for increasing accessibility for even more realms of teaching.